Hello and welcome to CG Rated Books. I have a book review for you guys today. We are going to talk about one of my childhood favorites. Now, this is a children's version. This is a condensed version of the original story. Jack London, John Griffith London, died in 1916, wrote this book in 1903. And what I have here is a very sentimental copy for me. This is not the original copy from my childhood, but it is one that I've shared with my own kids. So, The Call of the Wild. Let's talk about it. Jack London wrote about Buck. And I don't remember what his breed is. So Jack London wrote a story about Buck. Buck was a large breed dog, a ranch dog basically, that lived a very privileged life, very simple, until he was stolen away by a very familiar hand. It was sold into what would be considered a trafficking workforce, basically. The gold rush in the Klondike back in the 1900s required the use of sled dogs, and they needed dogs that met a certain criteria that could help pull sleds. And this story was very, very, very captivating because of the complexity of our inner selves. Right? Yes, it's about a dog, but what I loved most about it was the characters that the dog encountered along this journey. Both good and bad men, both good and bad dogs in the same sense. And there was a certain animalistic, innate presence that was sparked alive by his new endeavors, having to endure the cold winters, pulling a sled for men in search of specific needs. Now, it started off with just the basic provision of services towards men that were there to search for gold. And it led almost towards the end to the specific need of a group of folks that were there actually searching for gold. So from the provisions of being able to provide mail and food and supplies to actually coming into the employ of folks who were unfamiliar with the territory, who were there specifically to get rich. And the book is definitely better than the movie. Now, like I was mentioning before, this is a short, condensed version, a shortened version. They didn't change or add anything in it. They just removed a couple of, chapters, a couple of sections to condense it for the pleasures of small children. But I loved this book and had to read it again for myself. Will I go out and I don't have the full version. I have read it, but this is my copy here. Now, what I like most about it, and I don't even know how I even came across this copy, to be honest with you, but I love the imagery, and the binding is textured, right, with smooth laminated photographs, right, or photograph. And of course, since this is a children's version, it does come with, pictures and illustrations in it. This particular book is approximately 170 pages, 171. And great book. So, The Call of the Wild is now CG rated. Rated at 4.8 stars, in my opinion. Even this condensed version, 4.8 version stars for this version. Love the book. Love the book. Now, for my reaction. Oh, I loved it. I loved it. I love how the characters, and of course there's a couple of them. So guys like John Thornton, who was the last one that he would come across as having a connection with, right? John Thornton was out in search of gold, ended up getting injured. His friends had to go leave and get help and come back and get him. And he was camped out waiting for his friends to return when he was stumbled across after Buck had been employed by this man, his sister, and his brother-in-law. And they were cruel. They did not know what they were doing. Tenderfoots, I'm gonna say it, tenderfoots in the area. And of course they were arrogant city dwellers who was out in the wilderness trying to find gold, and they would not heed the advice. They probably, from the description, had money once before living in the city, and had squandered it away. They behaved very privileged and did not want to heed the advice. And after stumbling across John Thornton, they'd beaten the dogs into, they were all weary. They were near death, and Buck was leading the sleigh, and Thornton rescued him and freed him from his captivity with those three tenderfoots, and they developed a bond with each other. But up until that point, life seemed pretty simple enough, even though it was kind of treacherous for him and hard learning a new life. He went from green pastures to frozen winterland, and he had to experience the other dogs and learn how to pull a sled and the life of it. And so Francois was a decent, employer. He was a sled driver, and then of course you had he was a person. Some of the better characters in the story, and then of course Spitz, which was his main conflict, another dog, and their conflict was, of course, ended in tragedy, and Spitz was unable to survive his conflict. And we talk about some of the things that we do too. Let's talk about one of them. The main protagonist, Buck himself, thought life was grand, did not know that there was something more that he would have wanted or would have desired, and was pulled from that, and without choice placed in an environment that forced him to step up, that forced him to have to work harder. And in that rose more of what he naturally was, what was deep down inside, those things that he craved, those things that made him who he was, that he did not know was there. They came to the surface, and he was able to adapt, overcome, and he was able to allow that change to take place in him. And it made him better for it, and to see that. And then you have guys like Spitz, who we have a tendency to be able to create our own enemies sometimes, right? So even though there's a difference between standing your ground and being greedy, or protecting your ground. And I think that and being overprotective, right? You draw attention to yourself sometimes. Life is good where you are, but you get so overprotective of it that you draw attention to yourself, and that attention leads to you losing the very thing that you thought was yours. And that was Spitz. But Spitz was a good Lord. I've met people like that. Anyway, my reaction, loved it. Short book, short read. This is from the Great Classics for Children, and it's part of a collection, and it's printed by Dalmation Press. And I want to thank you for joining me today. Love this. I love this book. I love the story. And I was able to find it. I had it. I didn't know. I was able to get into my storage, and now I have the book back into my possession. And it sparks a lot for me. A lot of sentimental value in this. So, anyway. Thanks for joining me. You guys have a wonderful day, and keep reading.